Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I am going to be doing a review of A Stranger in Olondria by Sofia Samatar. This is a book that follows our main character who prior to the events of this book has never travelled outside of his town. Under the tutelage of his new teacher, who comes from the place of Olondria, our main character develops a sense of yearning for Olondria. After certain events occur in this book, he gets the opportunity to travel to this place which irrevocably changes him. This is a absolutely fantastic book. This is a book that if you like Guy Gavriel Kay, if you like, I would even go as far as to say Gene Wolfe, if you like somebody like Simon Jimenez, then I think this is a book that you will truly, truly adore because it is so beautifully written. I think without a doubt, it has got to be up there as one of the most beautifully written books that I've ever read. So with that little brief introduction, let's jump into my review of this book. I think you're already probably going to get a bit of a flavour as to where this review is going to go. Let's start with the writing. So the thing about this book is that it is a book for people who love books. It is so beautifully written. It is sumptuous in its descriptions. It is incredibly detailed, but without really detracting from the main story, which is something that I am quite sensitive to. I don't really like the term flowery prose, but I think it can often be quite relevant to certain authors. But I think with this author, she gets the balance right. She really adds in what needs to really enrich the story without implementing it in a way that detracts from it. It is so poetic, it is so lyrical, and it feels like almost somebody is singing to you. It almost feels like quite a visceral experience, and you feel kind of everything that's happening in this book because of the way that the narrative is told and written. As a natural extension of that, this world feels so well realised. It feels like a place that any one of us could be in. From what I understand, Samatar actually took influence from the Golden Age in Spain. And this is actually one of my favourite periods of history. And if you know anything about that period of history, there was an explosion of intellectual research and pursuit that was kind of fueled by the Islamic regime at that period of history. Lots of the sciences were being explored. There was an explosion of trade with other parts of the world. Spain was really kind of at the centre of that. Bear in mind at that time, like just to paint a picture, the UK was in its dark age and other parts of Europe were very much not having a good time while Spain was flourishing, and it was very much this centre of learning and excellence and trade. You really get that through that atmosphere that Samatar has created in this book, because it feels like a place that anybody who is sane would want to live in, because it's really about the exploration of the world through the sciences and the arts and other aspects of life too. And it just feels like a place that I would want to be in, to be honest. Like it feels reminiscent of history books that I've read about that period of history and the way that people lived. This book has layers and layers and layers of depth to it. The author uses different mechanisms to tell the story, which is why it particularly reminds me of Gene Wolfe. So as an example, she used poems, she used songs. She also has these little stories or novellas within the overarching story to create depth to the entire world. And that's something that Gene Wolfe, I think, does exceptionally well. And I think Samatar in this book very much gets to the same level of Wolfe that he does in the Book of the New Sun. It just really adds to the richness and to the depth to the story. Bear in mind, this is, from what I understand, a standalone. There is a second book, but it's like short stories as it relates to certain characters. It's not necessarily like a continuation of the series. So this is very much a standalone, whereas Gene Wolfe technically had 4 books. And yet she's able to achieve the same level of depth that Wolfe does in that quartet. And I just think that is absolutely remarkable. That's not to say that what Gene Wolfe hasn't created isn't remarkable, because it absolutely is. And it's one of the best series I've ever read. But I think Samatar does it in a way that perhaps feels a bit more approachable, yet I would say has the same amount of depth to it, even though it feels a bit more approachable, which I think is a real testament to this author's craft and her ability to write incredibly compelling stories. In terms of the characters, I would say this is a very character-driven story. I mean, there isn't necessarily like a plot. We are following our main character, Jovic, as he's going on this journey, and he's really kind of learning about the world and learning about his place in the world. Whilst this is a single POV book, this book is as much Jervik's book as it is the other characters' books as well. Like, as I mentioned, we get these like little stories within the overarching narrative, and we learn a lot about the other characters through those novellas within the overarching narrative. They are the ones telling their own stories, and I think that's such a great mechanism to add depth to other characters in a single POV book. It kind of reminds me of Guy Gavriel Kay. I mean, a lot of Guy Gavriel Kay's books do tend to be multi-POV, but I think he does a really amazing job sometimes of having like tertiary characters come in and tell their story through their eyes to one of the main POVs that we're following. And that's why I also recommend this book to people who are fans of GGK, and that's why I think this book is a great read for people who love GGK, because it is so layered and we have these stories within stories within stories, and every single character feels fleshed out. Every single character has a purpose. They add something to the overall narrative. They add something to our main character, and they add something to us, the reader, as well. This is a book that I think you don't really read for the plot. You read it for the character stories, and you read it for the atmosphere and the feeling that you get from reading it. Like, when I was reading this book, I just felt incredibly comforted. And even though there is some, I would say, quite dark elements, I wouldn't say it's grimdark or dark fantasy by any means, but there is some interesting discussion around like religion and like cults. It's done in a way that really fits the entire mood of this book, and the mood is something that I can't quite describe, which is not very helpful, but it's quite, I would say necessarily it's whimsical, but it's just very aware of itself, this book. And that's not a mood, I know, but it's very self-aware, and I think it does a really good job of showing us the complexity of life, but also the simplicity of it. Like, life is very much a contradiction in many ways, and we are presented that throughout the entirety of this book in a way that is very delicate and sensitive. And I think it's one of those books that, whilst I can't really categorize the mood, I just felt very comforted throughout the entire time that I read it. And I felt like I was also becoming a better reader for reading this book, because it is a masterclass in how to use layering techniques to really enrich the overall experience for the reader. This is a book 100% for book lovers. This is a book for people who appreciate literature and the arts. I would even go as far as to say that this is a love letter to those who love learning, who love reading, and like experiencing the world through other people's stories. And I think if you are somebody, and you probably are somebody who loves reading if you are watching this channel, then I think anybody who has even a passing interest in reading should read this book, because it feels like Samatar is imparting something really special on us, but we feel a part of the experience as well, if that makes sense. It's just wonderful. Like, it's really, really wonderful. In terms of themes, this is a book about, while also about like learning and the pursuit of arts and intellectualism, it's also a book about death, grief, and loss. Every single one of our characters has lost someone or something in this book. We really feel a deep sense of sympathy and empathy towards every single one. Some of us might even relate to some of those characters and their individual struggles. I most certainly did to at least one or two of the characters. Their grief and their loss really comes through the pages, and it is quite an emotional experience. I wouldn't go as far as to say as though I was bawling my eyes out, but it is one of those books that, you know, when you finish reading it, you just kind of need to sit on it, and you feel like you're mourning the loss of something. Not necessarily in a bad way, but you feel like you've experienced something that you're not ever really going to quite experience again. And I think that's part of what makes this book extremely, extremely special. Overall, this book is an absolute masterpiece. I gave this book a 5 stars, unless you couldn't tell prior to me saying that. I think every book lover should read it, especially if you are somebody who likes reading about reading and learning and the pursuit of creative art and the pursuit of knowledge and learning. That is something that I tried to hold myself to quite a lot. And so reading this book was an absolute dream. It is beautifully written. The characters are so well realised. The world just feels so distinct and feels so magical. This is a book that, even though I finished it weeks ago, I've been thinking about it quite a lot, because it really just does stick in your mind because of the questions that it raises. The writing is magical. Like, it truly is magical. If you are also somebody who wants to write and who maybe wants to publish their own books at some point, like, this is the sort of book that I would personally suggest you study, because it is a masterclass on how to write beautiful prose, multi-layered stories, and while and extremely well written characters. Let me know down below if you have read this book. I've not met many people who have read it. I would like to meet more people who've had. So if you have, do let me know down below and what your thoughts were on it. As I mentioned before, if you like Gene Wolfe, if you like Simon Jimenez, if you like Guy Gavriel, this is a book that you have to read because it is a book for book lovers. And I think those three authors, I would say, are also books for book lovers. So definitely check it out. If you have any questions, let me know down below and I will see you in my next review. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Every little helps and I will see you in my next one. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, take care, and I will see you very soon. Bye.